Pittsburgh Steelers fans, it is time for another edition of the Know Your Enemy podcast. My name is Michael Beck, your deputy editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and my co-host, as always, one Mr. Geoffrey Benedict. Geoffrey, how you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing great, Michael. Doing great.
Doing great. Love to hear that. And as always, on Wednesday nights, we like to have a special guest. Tonight from Arrowhead Pride, Ron Kopp Jr. Ron, how you doing?
I'm great, man. Good game coming up Sunday. Just not as many players as we would have liked, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, I think we should probably dive into that right off the top because for those that don't know, both the Steelers and Chiefs are battling a bit of COVID issues right now. And right now it still seems, at the time of recording, we'll knock on wood, still seems like the game will be played at 4:25 Eastern on Sunday. That, as we sit here right now, that's kind of how things are shaping up. But Ron, I know two of the biggest names on that, not named Patrick Mahomes, but two of the biggest names on that Chiefs offense, and Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill are on that COVID reserve list. Is there any worry that they won't be able to go on Sunday?
Oh, absolutely, there is. Yeah, no, it's there's no indication that it sounds like Kelce has mild symptoms. I should say there is an indication. Ian Rappaport reported that Kelce has mild symptoms. And yeah, we didn't have any positive tests coming out today in Kansas City on Wednesday. So that's a good sign. But yeah, man, there's absolutely a little bit of a scare that the Chiefs' top two weapons won't be in the game. And Chiefs fans have kind of known all season, man, we haven't had much of a third guy kind of step up and be a guy that can really, have confidence in going into a game where you don't have Kelce or Hill. So it's a huge deal, man. This offense hasn't had to deal with no Kelce or no Hill together since Mahomes has got here. So it's going to be really interesting to see if they really have to do that, how it even looks.
Are there any other players on the Chiefs that are right now questionable to if they're going to be back or not?
Oh man, it is a laundry list. You got guys like Tarvarius Ward went on the list earlier with Kelce. A guy like Nick Bolton, the rookie, went on the list later in the week. Mike Remmers, he was on IR, but he just went on the list as well. Amani Watts, a special teamer. Just off the top of my head, those are guys, and then there's even more. I mean, this COVID outbreak is definitely happening in Kansas City. It's not a good thing at all. But like I said, it's earlier in the week. They still have time, especially with the lax protocols we've seen from the NFL kind of give out. Still have some time to see if they can get off. But right now, it's a lot of guys, and it's going to be really interesting if they don't play with any of those, how they fare on Sunday.
So if the Chiefs are without their two big weapons, their Steelers' kind of biggest, well, really, the Steelers are a much better team against the pass defensively than they are defending the run this year. They've been terrible. I believe it's 3 consecutive games where teams have totaled more than 200 rushing yards against. It's just been bad for the Steelers over this stretch, and really it's been an issue all year long. But I'm curious what the Chiefs' kind of rushing attack looks like, and if the Steelers might be catching a break if those big names aren't available on the offensive side of the football for the Chiefs.
Yeah, no, this rushing offense, man, it should be better. This offensive line the Chiefs have right now, it's a very young group, but it's a very exciting group in terms of just how they finish blocks, how they had to just fire out and nail dudes. Guy like right guard Trey Smith, the 6th-round pick out of Tennessee. Obviously, I think a lot of people have realized now that he probably shouldn't have gone in the 6th round. Some of those medical issues had something to do with that, but he's just a stud, man. All the time he's driving guys into the ground. He's finishing blocks. The guy like center Creed Humphrey, the 2nd-round pick, does the same thing. And these guys are just nasty when it comes to running the ball. The problem this year, in my opinion, has been a little bit of two things. First of all, the running back room, I don't think is taking advantage of the blocking. I think a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he can shift through the traffic a little bit and kind of be a quick – short burst guy, but he's not hitting home runs. And you kind of want to see these running backs. There's these big lanes that I feel like they get sometimes where they just don't take advantage of them, man. They don't get all the yards. They only get the yards that are there rather than kind of maybe expand and get yards past the point of what the blocking is giving them. So I think that's one reason why the run game hasn't really taken off for the Chiefs this year, but also just the fact that it seems like Andy Reid or just the offensive coaching staff in general just really refuses to run more of I guess commit to the run, just be more of a downhill run game. They kind of just run these outside zones out of shotgun where the running backs aren't getting downhill. It's more of just a time filler, a way to just kind of get to the next play, chew some time off the clock and get 3 or 4 yards rather than actually be an actual part of their offense where they can threaten with that part of their game. So yeah, I think the run blocking has been really good this year, and I think they can take advantage of a Steelers front that is talented, but obviously has given up some the run yardage at times. But this running back group and the offense's willingness to run the ball has really hurt them and actually turning that into actual success on the field at times. So yeah, we'll see if they actually commit to it. Maybe it is a better day for the run offense, but I'm not banking on it.
Speaking of the offensive line, the Chiefs got Creed Humphrey, someone that a lot of Steeler fans wanted. I know I was cheering for him on draft day. We wanted him in the second round. That didn't happen. We got Pat Freiermuth, who I'm very happy with Pat Freiermuth, but we have a center who's currently struggling, transitioning from guard to center, and he hasn't had the best season. And we keep hearing about Creed Humphrey and how well he's doing. How good has he been, and what has that addition meant to the Kansas City Chiefs offense?
Well, yeah, personally, I've been calling for the Chiefs to do this to where they draft a center, first or second round and start him right away. You saw it with Mitch Morse. If you guys remember Mitch Morse, he's a Buffalo Bill now, but he was drafted by Kansas City, and he had a similar, early playing time where he got in the lineup pretty early and became a dominant force. So, yeah, I think the real thing is just having a centerpiece there, a higher talented guy rather than, Andy Reid. A lot of the time, it seems like in his career has really trusted the interior offensive line to kind of just be filled with guys, kind of be filled maybe with a late round pick or just some veteran free agent, not really, the actual top talented guys, not really investing a lot in that position. And you're seeing what's happening now when he does invest a lot in that position, because they signed Joe Thuney at left guard for, one of the highest guard contracts in the league. And then obviously taking a center with your second round pick, that's investing a lot because, center is not a position you pick very high most of the time. So yeah, Humphrey just this year has just been so good, run blocking and pass blocking. Run blocking is really where he makes his money, man. He just moves guys. I mean, he really does. He's this huge wide body, former wrestler. You can tell, you can see it, how he gets this leverage sometimes, man, where he just whips his hips around and turns on that shoulder and just drives a guy out of the way. He's just been great. And I know at center, pass protection wise, it's kind of hard to tell how good a center is doing in pass protection because, hey, they get a lot of help. They're the guy kind of helping the guards more than just taking a one-on-one pass pro rep. But it's not like he's getting steamrolled over a lot. And it's hard to even see him as a rookie anymore, even though he still is. This is still his first year in the NFL, but he's playing like a veteran. He's playing like a guy that's been here for a while. And it's a really welcoming sight for a team that has a veteran quarterback that's going to be playing for a while. You like to have your center kind of set in stone for the next, however long.
Yeah, no, Steeler fans definitely know when Marquise Pouncey took over back in 2010, I guess it was. It completely changed the offense. How much better he made that team altogether, just one spot alone. But bringing things back, and of course, the guy taking the snaps from Creed Humphrey, one frog sounding like dude, one of the better quarterbacks in football. Is Patrick Mahomes still playing that god tier of football that he just seems like he can't be stopped? Or our team's starting to figure him out? Is he still having a productive year that we've kind of learned to accept from a player of his caliber?
Yeah, it's funny, his stats, if you just look at his stats, you're like, oh, he's still having a pretty dang good year. Why is everyone kind of, maybe down on him a little bit? Why, hey, Patrick Mahomes, look at the stats, he's looking good. Well, it has been a down year. I mean, it's been pretty obvious. Defenses have really, really sold out in terms of just not blitzing him at all. I mean, you actually saw it Thursday night. The Chargers actually flipped the script and blitzed him, and I think that's kind of why he kind of got his flow back in it towards the end of the game, kind of, 3 straight touchdown drives to end that game. A lot of that had to do with how the Chargers were defending him. They just kind of got a little too aggressive, in my opinion, and kind of went away from what has been working against Mahomes all year. And that's playing those soft coverages, playing those too high coverages where you're not, you're making Mahomes throw those shorter to intermediate throws. And Mahomes is just impatient. That's all it is. He knows how talented he is. He knows the weapons he has. He doesn't want to settle for those throws all day, all game. And if you make him do that, there's going to be times where he just forces one. And that's just his nature right now. He's just this talented guy that's super confident in his abilities and confident in the guys he has around him, like a Kelsey and a Hill. He doesn't want to, check it down to Clyde Edwards-Helaire 10 times a game. But the thing is, he has started to get into that more. We've seen it in this win streak. That the game against the Raiders in Vegas, he checked it down. Darrell Williams had like 10 catches up, the Chiefs running back when Clyde was out. So he is kind of getting more and more into getting used to that, and that's helped the offense. That's why we've seen the offense be a little more effective over this last stretch. But when it comes down to it, man, he really does want to be aggressive. He really does want to push the ball down the field, and especially when he doesn't have Hill or Kelsey, he's really going to have to be disciplined and staying, not pushing it too much down the field. And And that's where really, he can just, like I said, get a little impatient, and he just hasn't really been as, on point, accurate wise as well either. There's been a lot of, some throws at feet and stuff. So just all in all, it hasn't been his best year overall, but we saw it against the Chargers, man. He can turn it on when the defense kind of allows him to. That's the thing. If the defense doesn't allow him to, we still haven't really seen him break through those cover 2 looks that the defense has been giving him all year.
Now you spoke about him playing without Kelce. The last time he did that was his rookie year, where he came in and played Week 17. That is the last time he has played a game without Travis Kelce. So he's exactly 1, and it was everyone was sad. That was him. They were resting everybody. Every time since he became a starter, he's had Travis Kelce. What does Travis Kelce do to a football game? What does he mean? I know Pittsburgh Steelers fans remember 2018 when we had no linebackers that could even remotely cover him. What he did to us. But what does he mean? What does he mean to a football game? What does he mean to Patrick Mahomes? What does he create?
Yeah, no, he's just a safety blanket, man. Mahomes has always used him as this guy that, what they do really is they just line Kelce up in advantageous positions and tell him, hey, run an option route, whichever way you can get open. And him and Mahomes have such this instinctual connection that they can kind of read off each other so well that, Mahomes can be thrown to where Kelce is going on an option route before Kelce is even making that cut, because they just know exactly which move they're both going to make depending on the defender's leverage. So that to say, man, he really is that safety blanket. He really is the thing Mahomes relies on the most. A lot of times it really isn't him getting like open in terms of a design play. It's not like Andy's cooking up this great design to get Kelce open. It's Kelce getting open by himself, whether it's just finding a zone between 2 linebackers or just 2 defenders in zone coverage, or just beating a guy one-on-one in man coverage. He's been getting beat up a lot this year, and that's actually why he hasn't had his best year. I say that, and he's still, the NFL leader in all tight end statistics. I mean, it's ridiculous how we kind of judge, a guy like Kelce and Mahomes just based on these bad years they're kind of having. And all that to say, Kelce is just, he is this guy that Mahomes really relies on, and they have a great connection. Hasn't been as great this year because defenders are really, or defenses are really using physical coverage. Guys at the line of scrimmage to really throw him off his timing of his route, and it has impacted him. But when he is able to get past those, and him and Mahomes are in that connection, you see what happens like against the Chargers. He just gets open, and he just has this knack for finding little lanes, for yak ability, man. I mean, I don't know how he does it. He's not the fastest guy anymore. He's definitely, not outrunning anybody, but he's just quick enough. He just makes those subtle moves. He's finesse enough to find those little seams. So he's a special player, man. And it was really cool to see him go off Thursday night.
If I can follow up real quick, Mike Tomlin, talking about Travis Kelce, referred to him as a number 1 receiver. He said, no matter what you title him, he's the number 1 receiver. Would you agree with that? Is Travis Kelce the number 1 guy in this team you have to stop? Would you rank him above Tyreek Hill as the number 1 guy you have to stop on the Chiefs offense?
So when you're talking about a defense who they want to stop, I would actually say Kelce is the guy you want to slow down, because I think this year, though, Hill has been actually the number 1 target getter. Mahomes has actually, it seems like, I say, Kelce is that safety blanket. It does actually seem that it's actually transitioned a little bit to Tyreek this year. Tyreek is getting a little bit more of just these short routes, these quick throws, just to get the ball in his hands, knowing that, just depending on the play, a defender makes one little subtle move the wrong way, Hill could take off for 10, 15 yards, even if he catches it at the line of scrimmage. So that's been happening more this year. So in terms of targets, in terms of who they're getting the ball to the most this year, it is Hill. They are really force-feeding Hill more than they're force-feeding Kelce this year. But in terms of who you really want, if you want to make Mahomes uncomfortable, if you want to make the offense just kind of slow and stagnant, get the ball, out of Kelce's hands, because that's when it's been the worst this year. A game like a few weeks ago against Denver was really beating Kelce up, and the offense just really could not get anything going. Thankfully, the defense has been good enough to kind of make up for the offense's woes. But yeah, I'd say Kelce is the most important receiver if you're a defensive takeaway. Because like you just mentioned, man, Mahomes has not had to play a game without Kelce since he wasn't the real starter. So it's a big deal if he can't play with him this weekend.
Now, I do see some people in the live chat saying that we're lucky to get these guys out. They're not out of the water yet. These COVID protocols, there's still a decent chance that any of these Chiefs players that find themselves on the COVID reserve list could be back in the lineup, except for Harrison Butker for other reasons, but he will not be kicking. Aside from that, these guys could still be in the lineup, but dialing things back a little bit earlier, Ron, you mentioned Patrick Mahomes kind of got hotter against the Chargers once they started to blitz him. Obviously, the Chiefs are a team that is competing for that number one slot in the AFC, one of the Super Bowl favorites, and the Steelers are just trying to claw their way back into a playoff spot. Obviously, there's a bit of a talent differential, and like no one's really going to deny that at this point. However, TJ Watt's been a guy that can turn the tables for the Steelers. If they're not able to blitz, is that kind of the key for the Steelers in this game here, is have a guy like TJ Watt go off, put Mahomes on the ground a couple times and not have to send the blitz? Is that kind of the ideal world for the Steelers defense?
Absolutely, 100%. If you can get after Mahomes with only 4 guys, I know it's kind of like the cliche, any great quarterback. Hey, if you can get pressure without blitzing, everyone loves to say that, but it really is true, man. Mahomes, he really takes advantage of the blitz, dude. He's just so smart and so athletic, kind of combined, that not only does he know where to attack where the blitz is coming, he also is just athletic enough to where if the pressure really does get to him, he can still escape. He can make these ridiculous throws running full speed, the other way across the field. So if you really can play coverage, have those 7 guys in coverage, you're doing great. And yeah, you mentioned TJ Watt. This right tackle position in Kansas City right now, it's been kind of fluctuating a little bit with injuries. Lucas Niang, the rookie, actually just came back, played well against the Chargers, and then he's on COVID too. He's a guy I didn't mention. And that leaves Andrew Wiley at right tackle, and I know TJ Watt, for the most part, correct me if I'm wrong, comes from that right side of the offense formation, the left side of the defense. I know he moves around quite a bit, but that's just a huge mismatch. I mean, we've seen Andrew Wiley have to deal with Micah Parsons and Max Crosby over this recent stretch. Both of those guys did a number on Wiley. The Chiefs offense was just able to kind of counteract it by, just running away from him or one thing they were doing to Crosby was running a lot of screens towards him, kind of taking advantage of his aggressiveness getting upfield. They could try to do that with Watt too, but I think Watt's a different level of smart, and different level of player than a guy like Max Crosby, no matter how good Crosby's been this year. So yeah, that's a huge mismatch, and that's a game-wrecking mismatch, in my opinion. We saw what Micah Parsons could do against Wiley. He had a strip sack and another sack that impacted that game. Watt could have a similar impact, and especially with Mahomes potentially not having his top 2 targets, he's not going to be able to get the ball out as quick as he wants to this game, and that's going to be a really big deal against, if Watt is lining up against the 3rd-string right tackle and Andrew Wiley most of the time.
Now, the Chiefs defense has come alive here this year. They started the year not so great, and then they really turned it around to where they're recently have been playing really well. Obviously, they gave up some points in the Chargers game. What has been the difference in the Chiefs defense here, the last, 2 months?
Yeah, absolutely. It really has just been the coaching staff realizing which personnel they need to have in the game, as funny as that sounds. But to start this year, man, Steve Spagnuolo really trusted veteran safety Dan Sorensen to be the starting free safety rather than the 3rd-year safety Juan Thornhill, who obviously is just has more athletic upside, is just more of a playmaker. Sorensen makes plays, but in coverage, man, he is an absolute liability, and quarterbacks are taking advantage of it all year. And finally, about week 6 or 7, coincidentally, as soon as this win streak started, he switched to Thornhill as the primary safety. Now Sorensen is only in a particular role in the dime defense. So that's one reason. But also another personnel change was Chris Jones. They really wanted him to be a defensive end. And honestly, it's kind of something he wanted to do. It's always something he's kind of begged the coaching staff. They kind of told us that in the summer. And I think they realized kind of halfway through the year a little bit. And I think one thing was just they didn't have any Frank Clark or Melvin Ingram at the beginning of the year either. So I think that didn't help. But Chris Jones at defensive end was just not working at the beginning of the year. And like I said, it could have helped to have other guys on the line too. But once they moved him back to defensive tackle full time, which happened again pretty much right as soon as the defense started turning it on around week 6 or 7 or 8. All of a sudden, he looks like one of the best defensive players in the league again. If you ask me, from week 8 on, he's the defensive player of the year. From week 8 on, he didn't play last week, So if you take away that week, going into that week, he led the NFL in pressures going in there since week 8. So all that to say, man, is Jones has been an absolute wrecking ball since he got back to defensive tackle full time. But it obviously helps to bring in a guy like Melvin Ingram. As you guys know, as you guys are well aware of Melvin Ingram, he has been such a big help in Kansas City. We really needed a third guy to make an impact. And, he really has. I mean, there's no doubt about it. The box score isn't necessarily filling up for him, but he makes a big impact in both the run game and the pass game for him so far. And he's basically their starter now, and he plays the most snaps outside of anyone not named Frank Clark and Chris Jones right now. So that's been a huge addition for the defense, no doubt.
It definitely is funny. He really didn't make too much of an impact when he was on the Steelers.
Yeah.
Obviously, he was unhappy, gets his way out of town, and he's performing better. So good for him, I guess. I don't think Steelers are going to feel the same kind of way like they did last week with Bud Dupree's return to Pittsburgh, as they will seeing old Melvin Ingram after, 6 games as a Steeler. But, oh well, that's just another player we got to face. But when we look at this Chiefs defense as a whole, is there one spot in particular that the Steelers could really kind of try to take advantage and just run their offense through, whether or not that's like throwing the tight ends over the middle, the rushing attack as a whole, or just certain spots and coverages that the Chiefs have kind of struggled against this year?
Yeah, depending on what the COVID situation breaks down, the Chiefs could have some cornerback issues this game, no doubt. Charvarius Ward, I didn't mention Rashad Fenton. I should have mentioned him at the top too. Those have been 2 of their best corners this year. L'Jarius Sneed's obviously been their best, in my opinion. But when they're in those 3 corner sets, which Pittsburgh will put them in a lot with their 3 receiver sets they like to do, Sneed will be in the slot. So when you're talking about the outside corners, the Chiefs, if the COVID holds up as it is today, the Chiefs would be missing their 2 outside starting cornerbacks. And that's where I think that the Steelers could take advantage. I think the Steelers, the quick passing game could really be a big deal for them. They could just, get the ball in Deontay Johnson's hands real quick, because a guy like Mike Hughes and DeAndre Baker, they've been good in spots this year, but when they've been asked to play a full game, they have been exposed at times. The Chargers game in week 3 comes to mind. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen just absolutely grilled those 2 on slants all day, and then a sluggo actually towards the end of the game, a slant and go, turned into a touchdown because of that. So I know the Steelers love their quick passing game. They want to get the ball out of Big Ben's hands quick. One way they could take advantage of the Chiefs defense for sure would be get the ball to your playmakers out in the perimeter, make them kind of make one-on-one plays with the cornerbacks in space and kind of test those guys, because, like I said, they're not the starters. And if the starters were, and I would not be saying they were a weakness, because I do like how the Chiefs cornerbacks have been playing, but these reserves could definitely be taken advantage of for sure.
Well, Naji Harris has been a really good running back for the Steelers, even though our run game isn't so great. And but he's also been a pretty good receiver. How are the Chiefs linebackers in coverage, and is what do they represent? What do you get out of the Chiefs linebackers right now?
Man, before Willie Gay, Willie Gay has been out a lot this year. Not a lot, but he missed the first part of the season. Then he actually missed this last game with COVID. Willie Gay is a second-year linebacker, second-round pick last season. He's really their only prime athlete at the linebacker position. Anthony Hitchens, man, he's the veteran in the room, but man, he gets exposed quite a bit in terms of just outside runs to off tackle runs or just quick screens to the outside, and that's really been the Chiefs' problem on their defense. In this little run, not just this year, but before this year, and that's why they've been investing in the linebacker position so much. Is they really lack sideline to sideline range in their linebackers. All that to say, Willie Gay is the guy that brings that up for them. He is the playmaker in the group right now. He's actually jumped within the last month or so. He's had 2 plays where he actually jumped the route and should have had a pick and just pretty much dropped it. So he's been a really good playmaker in pass coverage. Nick Bolton actually was kind of his liability most of the year. All of a sudden, he steps up in this Thursday game, 3 passes defended, and all 3 were crucial passes. One was at the goal line, one was on 4th down, and then one actually ended up in an interception because it just tipped into the air. So all of a sudden, Nick Bolton's making plays in the pass game too. So that used to be the biggest liability of this team, no doubt about it, was their linebackers, just the middle of the field and pass coverage. But it is getting better and better. And a guy like Willie Gay absolutely makes plays. He's looking more comfortable every day. And if you're not careful, seeing where he is on the field, he'll jump a route that you think he can't, because he is that athletic, that quick, and he's been a godsend to this linebacker group for the Chiefs.
Speaking of this game as a whole, of course, we started off the show kind of talking about the COVID outbreaks for either team. Obviously, the Chiefs have more guys on that list than the Steelers at this point. But have you heard any rumblings that this game could potentially be threatened to be moved, or if there's any kind of thoughts on whether or not that might be a Monday or Tuesday type thing, or does it seem like it's pretty concrete that Sunday they'll play this game?
Well, the good news in Kansas City was that we had no positive tests come out on Wednesday. I mentioned that earlier. So that is a good sign. I have not heard, though, and Andy Reid today in his press conference made it sound like that's not the case. They're not thinking about moving it right now. There have been no discussions about it. And I do think one reason why is you see these games last week, the two games that got moved to Tuesday, and obviously the game on Monday too. No one really got helped with that extra time, right? I mean, they still had, their Garrett Gilbert still had to start, and other guys that weren't, shouldn't have had to play, still had to play. So I think that'll kind of be in the NFL's mind too. And I do think Andy Reid, with his say with the league, he's a big figure in the league, just like Mike Tomlin is. Obviously, they're both veteran coaches, but I really think with Andy, I think he will want to play this game on Sunday no matter what. I don't think he wants to delay this, right? I don't think he wants to have a short week going on the road to Cincinnati, which, is still going to be a huge game because as much as the Chiefs are in a great spot right now, they don't have anything locked up. And this COVID stuff could really threaten to, push them out of the number one seed or even the division spot. The Chargers could still win the division if the Chiefs just, continue, lose with this COVID stuff going on. So all that to say, I really think that Andy will push the game to be played on Sunday, because I think he'll trust his team. I think it'll kind of be a confidence kind of thing. He'll say, hey, I have confidence in you guys that you guys can win even if you're shorthanded. But I think that's just going to more be like, it's more of just like, hey, if we lose this game, we lose this game. It's better to lose this game now than on Tuesday and then have a short week going into a big game on the road against another team that wants to really fight for the AFC playoff lives, just like the Steelers. So I really see this game getting played on Sunday.
Steelers have a similar situation where we got the Browns coming up next week. Is this game a big game? Because it seems to me almost like Steelers Chiefs feels like it should be a big game. I don't know if it's the Steelers this season, just how spotty and strange this season has been and how bad they've been at times, or what. But it doesn't seem like anyone really views this as a big game. Like even when you talk about the Steelers could win this game, and it's like, yeah, but even if they did, is it a big win? It's weird. It just kind of feels like this game has kind of been written off, almost like it doesn't matter quite as much as some of the other ones.
Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. And these two classic franchises, I mean, whenever they meet up, it should be a big deal, right? And I do think it still is because, like you guys have mentioned, I mean, you guys, there's an AFC playoff spot on the line, and every win counts right now. And it's such a jumbled mess right now in the AFC that you don't know, who's going to win, who's going to lose. You have to win every game. You can't depend on anything else to happen. So I think it's still a big game in that sense. This COVID stuff's kind of screwing it up a little bit, I would say. I do think because, I'll say it. The Steelers are so well coached. They're one of those teams where no matter how well you're playing as the opponent of the Steelers, I just wouldn't bank on it being any sort of blowout or anything. I mean, 29-0 against the Vikings, and it still comes down to the last play. So it's just one of those things where I from our end, I think it was always a big game to an extent. I know what you mean. Obviously it's not the Steelers of old, but I think we always in Kansas City were looking at this game like this is the next move to clinch the division. The Chiefs would be that much closer to clinching it, and every win counts, and this is a home game. I'd say it's still a bit. I'd say we still were looking at it as a big game around here, but I definitely know what you mean. It's just not the same. It's not the same couple years ago where it's Chiefs Steelers, both two of the AFC favorites. It's just not that anymore. But at the same time, with how jumbled up the AFC is, who knows? Maybe the Steelers could sneak in and do some stuff in the playoffs. Who knows, man?
If the Steelers are able to win these last three games, they got the Chiefs, then the then the Browns, then the Ravens. If they are able to win those three games, they probably win the AFC North with how things are shaping out. And I know the Bengals have some pretty tough opponents up ahead for them. So to me, this is a huge game. So I think for either team, obviously the Chiefs want to win, not only win their own division, but win that top seed in the AFC. So it'll be interesting to see how everything shakes out. But we are approaching our halfway point in the show. Ron, I have one final question for you. We always like to put our guests on the spot and try to get a score prediction out of you and what you kind of foresee in this game. And I'll give you the courtesy of giving 2 score predictions, one with everyone being out that's currently on the COVID list, and one if everyone's healthy, because really that's fair.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You're not going to know who's, it's not going to be everyone back off COVID. It's not going to be, it's not going to be everyone on the COVID list by Sunday probably. But if we're at where we're at now, I was saying in our group chat, man, without Kelsey, without Hill, with TJ Watt going against Andrew Wiley most of the time, man, I could really see this being a Chiefs loss. So I'm going to go out and say it. I'm as crazy as it sounds, I'm going to say it. I'd say Pittsburgh wins 17-10 if it is the COVID stuff as we're in right now, because I really think the Chiefs offense is going to supremely struggle without Kelsey and Hill. If they are back, if Kelsey and Hill are back, I see the Chiefs defense playing well against the Steelers offense, and then the Chiefs offense doing just enough. I'd say about a 24-14 win Chiefs if the Kelsey and Hill are back.
Hey, no, totally fair observations. I don't think too many people would argue with you on that one. Ron, before we let you go, is there anything you want to plug?
Check us out, arrowheadpride.com. I actually do an opponent scout every week. We'll be coming out actually tomorrow. I do a deep look on you guys. So come in, check out the article, and tell me where I kind of missed on you guys, because I'm not consulting any Steelers people. I'm just doing it myself. So we'll see how accurate I am on where you guys are at this year. But yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Hey, our pleasure having you on. Thanks again for jumping on the podcast, Ron.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, talk to you soon. Now, Steeler fans, if you just hang tight on YouTube and Facebook, we're going to flip over to the second half of our show. If you are listening on a podcast platform of any variety, go ahead and click over to part 2 right now. All righty, Pittsburgh Steeler fans, it is time for the second half of Know Your Enemy. My name's Michael Beck. He is Geoffrey Benedict. We are hanging out here tonight breaking down the Steelers and the Chiefs. We kind of ended the show talking about it. I think this is a huge game. I know Ron, one of our guests, didn't see it as kind of that as monumental of a game that these matchups usually tend to be. Geoffrey, let's just frame it this way: if the Steelers are able to win this game, how do you view this team through all these ups and downs? If they were to go back to back beating the Titans and the Chiefs, how would you feel about the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I honestly, it wouldn't change my opinion on them at all this year. We're so crazy up and down that where do we stand? I kind of want to see this, because the Chiefs are not, oh gosh, I'm dooming us right here. The Chiefs are not a great run team, which means they're going to put up 250 rushing yards and not be able to pass the ball for some reason, because they are more of a passing offense. I like the Steelers matchups with TJ Watt and Joe Hayden, especially if Joe Hayden's getting healthier than he was this past week. If he's playing well and they don't have, if they can find ways to keep him off Tyreek Hill, keep him away from Tyreek Hill, because they'll be in good shape. I think the Steelers have a chance here.
Yeah, if the Chiefs don't have Kelsey or Tyreek Hill, like you mentioned, their running game hasn't been good, and we're observant of football. You can see it's not a good rushing team. And like our guest said earlier, they don't have the weapons outside of Kelsey and Hill. They've been very reliant on both those guys. If they're not in the game, that's like not having Watt and Minka. And did that not happen against the Chargers or one of these past games? If you don't have either of those guys, the Steelers are going to get absolutely gutted defensively. They just can't keep up with that. I don't see the Chiefs having an easy time at all putting points up on the board. Right now, to me, I feel like if Kelsey and Hill are out, I think the Steelers should be favored to win this game, because I think it could be ugly, low-scoring game, but those guys mean so much to that offense. Without them there, I feel like Mahomes will just be a sitting duck, like we kind of saw in the Super Bowl last year, just getting beat up because he's got to hold on to the ball for so long, waiting for these receivers like Josh Gordon, trying to get open. That's kind of what we're faced with here. Would you agree with that? That these guys being out, it should be the Steelers game?
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Absolutely. I think I've been a big stater of this argument here, but Travis Kelce, to me, and you know this, I think he's the most dangerous offensive weapon in the NFL. I think he is the number one guy in the NFL because he's at that tight end position. Yards are a different, production's a different number there, but I think he is the best weapon in the NFL, and we have never seen Patrick Mahomes without him. We have seen Andy Reid with different quarterbacks and Travis Kelce put up very similar offensive results that they do with Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is a much better quarterback than I just lost his name, Smith, whatever his name, Alex Smith. He's a better quarterback than Alex Smith. Don't get me wrong. He makes big plays. He's that kind of guy. But Alex Smith with Travis Kelce in Andy Reid's offense was putting up similar to numbers to what we see from Mahomes. He did, like, it's the offense that has a lot to do with it. And I'm very interested to see what Mahomes looks like without Kelce. And I'd love to see that this week against the Steelers, because especially if Devin Bush is out, who do we have to even cover Travis Kelce? Like,
Schobert,
you can put
still a decent, like Schobert, Edmonds, like they're coverage guys. I know it's not. Schobert just had his best game as a Steeler. Let's be real here. He just had his best game as a Pittsburgh Steeler. So like,
yeah. And what tight end was he covering?
No, you're not wrong. Like obviously, but like
he's
better
not a
than
guy.
Vince Williams. It's better than like having Vince.
Joe
Williams
Schobert
one-on-one.
is a zone coverage linebacker. You're not going to man him up on Kelce. He is really good in zone, moving around, finding things. And yes, he did have his best game this past week. Edmonds is more your man guy, but if you're dropping Edmonds down, what are you running? Are you running some bizarre nickel? Are you like, who are you putting deep? Like, how is this all working? At that point, are you doing like Akella Witherspoon as a deep safety kind of position and Joe Hayden outside? And like, how are you doing this with Edmonds on Kelce? And man, it doesn't work very well with this idea that you need guys back.
This raises up a good point. I know you do the snap count articles. I know you do tons of film work. What the heck has happened with Trey Norwood? Is this guy not on the field anymore? What is going, like, could that not be an option? Why hasn't he been playing?
Okay, yeah, Trey Norwood, there is a very simple explanation for that. Trey Norwood's our dime back. And since the Detroit Lions put on tape just the Steelers' inability to deal with heavier sets, we're barely using dime. He got 8 snaps late after, and also we haven't had the lead a lot. Really, like, we haven't. So teams are like,
no, we haven't in like 6 weeks.
Yeah, like 6 offensive linemen, 2 tight ends, a running back, maybe a fullback in there. Why do you need wide receivers? Just run at the Steelers. We see a lot more heavier sets than we see a lot of wide receiver sets. So we're not seeing dime as much. And because of that, Trey Norwood's just not getting on the field. This last game, after I have an article out about it with the Vertex this week with Dave Schofield about Joe Hayden's usage and how they kind of benched him. I don't want to say they benched him because it was probably most likely a conversation that was had. Yeah, but the snap count, he was the starting guy, and they were kind of rotating him out for a bit. And then after that play, everyone should remember it, he gets absolutely torched downfield, and the receiver drops the ball. He played the next play, and after that, he was the dime back. Akella Witherspoon came in, took over the primary outside cornerback role, and Joe Hayden was coming in dime. Joe Hayden took his normal spot, left side of the defense, in dime. Akella Witherspoon would swap from left to right. Cameron Sutton would slide inside, and Trey Norwood would come on. And that's the dime they were using. But, I mean, are we going to see that against the Chiefs? We may see him more against the Chiefs if the Chiefs are spreading this out. But in all honesty, that plays to the Steelers' strengths. If you're letting us go nickel and dime all the time, this is a better defense than if you're putting us into heavy sets where, you know, we had 5 linebackers on the field a couple of plays, and that's just like, who's coming in? That's Derek Tuska getting extra snaps. Like, that's not as good as Trey Norwood. He had a good game. That was a good heads up play, just getting his hand out there. But I mean, I like Tuska and Charlton, but they're not really that impact player. They're not.
You know what I will say though about them, and like, I know this isn't about the game itself, but I would definitely say compared to what the Steelers got out of Chicolo in years past, and I know Ola Denny is playing pretty well for the Titans. They're getting more production out of Charlton and Tuska than they did those guys last year. Like the backups behind Watt and Highsmith. Like, like they're getting some decent snaps. Like there are still pressures getting to the quarterback when those guys are on the field. So that is definitely a step up from what we saw a year ago. Are they great? No, God, no. You still want an outside linebacker 3 that the Steelers try to get out of Melvin Ingram. Obviously, we saw how that played out, and we'll see him this weekend, which will be something. But continuing with outside linebacker play, TJ Watt, obviously just elected to the Pro Bowl. He's pretty good at football, if we didn't already know that. I kind of expect him to have another big, like, I feel like this is the week where it's like, all right, this guy's defensive player of the year. It's over. Myles Garrett's probably not going to play. I just think this is going to be a big game for TJ Watt where he can kind of take over this game, regardless of the talent that the Chiefs have. Like you put 3 sacks from Patrick Mahomes on your highlight reel. That's going to make some national headlines. Would you agree with that? Is this kind of like TJ Watt's, like, this is the game for him to take over?
Well, right now I believe he's the favorite for Defensive Player of the Year.
It's growing too.
If you come into this game, you get, I won't even go 3. I'll go 2 sacks on Patrick Mahomes, but one of them is a strip sack that, say, I don't know, someone picks up and returns for a touchdown, right? And that's a pointable difference where you look and say, wow, they won a close game. TJ Watt strip sack was a huge part of that. Get another like pass deflection or 2. Just an overall like normal TJ Watt game, but have something like a strip sack go for a touchdown. You know who's the Defensive Player of the Year? TJ Watt. Like, it doesn't matter at that point. That big game, you beat the Chiefs, you sacked Mahomes, you stripped the ball, defensive touchdown. Ben Roethlisberger beats Patrick Mahomes in his final season. You're the Defensive Player of the Year. That's the kind of situation they're in. And like he said, they're having trouble on that side of the line. And that makes me wonder, like, if we could see the Chiefs actually come out in some different packages and see Andy Reid put some more tight ends out there, put, some extra people out there so they can just flat out mug TJ Watt like the Tennessee Titans did, where they put extra players out there and just were like, hey, you 3, just like gang tackle TJ Watt as soon as the ball is snapped.
Okay, so the Ravens and Bengals are playing one another this weekend. One of those teams have to lose. I doubt we'll see any more ties in the NFL. It just doesn't happen that often. One of those teams is going to lose. If the Pittsburgh Steelers manage to win this game, they will move up in the standings to second place in the AFC North. That's just how it's going to work out. You win this game, you're going to end up number 2. You can't pass whoever wins, but you will pass whoever loses. Hopefully it's the Ravens who win because the Steelers do hold that tiebreaker, and the Steelers do play the Ravens again. As we sit here right now, the Steelers have a good chance to beat the Chiefs if they're hammered by COVID. Then they got the Browns. Then they got the Ravens. Browns are at home, and the Browns are playing terrible football right now, the worst they've played all year. Like, I've tried to write this team off so many times, but right now it feels like they kind of have an inside track, especially with the COVID outbreak for the Chiefs. I have to keep throwing that out there. Kind of feels like they should be the favorite to win this division at this point because of, like, the Bengal or the Browns have to play the Packers, the Ravens have to play the Rams, the Chiefs, when they're healthy next week, have to go to Cincinnati. Like, these matchups are huge. If the Steelers can steal this one from the Chiefs because they're having a terrible outbreak, the other teams in the division have to lose games. And then the Browns and the Bengals are playing the last week of the year, and they're going to compete with one another. They don't want the other team to win. It really feels like, to me, like the Steelers, if they manage to win this game, I'm starting to lean heavily somehow, some way, to the Steelers win this division. Am I nuts? Or like, does this team that hasn't looked very good all year long somehow have another division title up their sleeve?
If Joe Hayden and TJ Watt are both healthy for the last 3 games of the season, they say somehow beat the Chiefs, and then Joe Hayden and TJ Watt both are full strength for the last 2 games of the season, I absolutely agree with you that they could pull this off. And it would be crazy. It would be absolutely crazy to me that the Steelers could pull that off and be like, win the AFC North again. And really, even in 2 disappointing seasons, send off Ben Roethlisberger with back-to-back AFC North championships. That would be ridiculous.
Yeah, like, for me, like, I look at this roster, I'm like, this isn't a Super Bowl roster. Like, they play the Rams,
No,
like, I feel like they'd get absolutely, like, ran up on if they made it that far. If they played the Patriots in New England, oh, God. If they played the Chiefs healthy in Arrowhead, oh, God, no. Like, no, I don't want that. It just, like, this isn't a Super Bowl team to me. Like, I hate to say it. Like, they're pieces away, and I think anyone watching this team can watch them give up 40 points in a game. You're like, yeah, you know what, this team isn't that good. But, like, I feel like that's your Super Bowl damn near. You win the division, sure, it's any given Sunday still, but you still got to win 4 playoff games against pretty damn good teams. And unless they're getting lucky against some outbreaks or whatnot, I don't really anticipate anything too big for this team if they make the playoffs. But to me, like, winning the division this year, that's like, how did you do this? Especially with how many people wrote them off. Am I nuts? Is the division, they're kind of like, yeah, this is our trophy this year?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. That would be amazing. It would not even make sense. But again, if TJ Watt and Joe Hayden are healthy, this is a very different team. And they're right now looking like they could be that team. And we're kind of holding out hope, like, okay, if cross all your fingers, TJ Watt's healthy, this team wins games that they shouldn't win. They shouldn't have beaten the Titans, but they did. Like, they got outplayed, and statistically outside of, turnovers, the Steelers were getting absolutely destroyed. But if you count, a turnover on downs, Joe Hayden's fantastic tackle to get the Steelers the win. If you count that as a turnover, there were 5 in that game. That's crazy. And that's how you win. That's how you win when you're not good.
What's wild to me, if neither of those 2 fumbles happening against the Detroit Lions in overtime, the Steelers would be the 6th seed in the AFC right now. They'd be above Baltimore in the standings, below Cincinnati, and the 6th seed in the AFC. Bonkers. What a play here and there kind of equates to in the grand scheme of things, especially this late in the season. Obviously, that is a massive factor. Kind of getting back into this game at all. If the Chiefs are healthy, are you scared that the Steelers have another one of these kind of like hard to watch losses like we saw against the Bengals and Chargers? Of course, they came back in that game, and as well as the Vikings. But I feel like with Kelsey and Tyreek Hill in the lineup, I feel like one of them just goes off for something stupid like 200 yards.
Oh man, I was trying to save this for the score prediction, but I can't now. I have this really weird feeling about this game. I'm going to go with the opposite. I think if Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce play, I'm going to pick the Steelers to win this game.
Really?
Just partly because it doesn't make sense, and that's the most Steelers thing to do, is do what doesn't make sense.
That's on brand for this year.
Yeah, like it's kind of the deal. Especially if Kelsey's out and Hill plays. I think that really plays into the Steelers' strengths. I think if both of them miss, we're going to see Andy Reid pull off like 250 some rushing yards. And then once the Steelers are trying to stop, what should be a terrible run game, not a great run game, but suddenly is amazing because, they're playing the Steelers. We'll see some unknown person just step up and make some big plays, and the Steelers lose. In my mind, this is how crazy this season is to me. It's like destroyed my ability to rationally approach football. If Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill do not play, I'm picking the Steelers to lose this game. And if they do play, I'm picking them to win it just because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I'm going to say, like, that's not the most, like, ridiculous thinking I've heard, because this season has been dumb. like there's no good way to put it. Like, the Steelers are losing games they should win, winning games they should lose. The year started with the win against the Super Bowl favorite in the Buffalo Bills with the block freaking punt. Like, what is going on with this team? It is wild. Of course, there's 3 games left in the season. Geoffrey, I know your thought, like, throughout the entire year, is the Steelers were still going to find a way to go 500. Is Mike Tomlin going to have his first losing season? He's 1 win away from not having a losing season again. What do you expect here over these last 3 weeks?
The Steelers are not losing back-to-back to the Browns and Ravens. So I did that win against the Titans, to me, clinched the 500. Now the question is, can we get 9-7-1 or even 10-6-1? I don't see the Steelers ending on a 4-game win streak. Although, I mean, that's what Keith Butler kind of talked about, is like, the 2005 Steelers kind of snuck in to the thing, winning their last 4 or 5 games and then won out. I don't see that at all this season. And that doesn't make any sense. They don't have that high-end talent. They don't have a quarterback who can do what the 2005 version of Ben Roethlisberger could do. And they don't have the defense either. But if this team somehow pulls that off, how crazy would that be? Yeah, I absolutely think they can do it. And I do not think they're 7, 9-1. No, it's not happening. This team is at least 8-8. Mike Tomlin gets another one. And while people will laugh at that and poo-poo it and try and turn it into a negative, it's an impressive feat. This team was at 1-3, and people were like, they're going to win maybe 3 games this year. The defense has only gotten worse since then, right? And the offense hasn't gotten better. Like, they're scoring less and they're giving up more points, and they're still somehow finding ways to win. It's all their wins are improbable. Every single one of them is now like, you're just looking at it and you go, that doesn't make sense. How do they win this game? That's the Steelers team. I don't know. I gave up on trying to make sense on this team a long time ago.
If the Steelers somehow do run this gauntlet, win 4 in a row to get in, oh my good! Like I feel like that would like just make my brain like somehow think they're a favorite to win things and make some stupid prediction and like slaughter the wild card game because it's at home and just talk myself into them being Super Bowl champions again. But that's just how things work with me. So like, oh my gosh, like if they could pull that off, no, like obviously it'd be exciting, like that would be awesome. But like to me, like obviously this isn't quite on topic of the Chiefs Steelers game, but like if they are able to pull that off, in the grand scheme of things, would a division title and say they win the wild card round, lose in the divisional, let's just say that's how this year plays out. Is the team better off picking like 26th, still having a ton of cap space, and like going out with a big winning streak to end the year, or would they be better off missing out on the playoff? Like, what sets up your future better?
To me, it's winning. Winning breeds winning. That's how you win. And this team is going to get better by developing who they have. That's the biggest improvement you see. So for me, getting that culture, getting that win, we've seen it this year. These guys, especially the offensive line, some of the younger guys, they don't know how to win. Like you're seeing guys like TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick pull out wins. And some of these young guys, they don't really know how to win. I'm going to include, I won't even include like Deontay Johnson in that. I definitely Chase Claypool. Like he's been here, losing, never heard of her guy, but he doesn't, like, I feel like he kind of rode that as a rookie, but the more he's gotten involved, they're not winning. And you can see the culture hasn't developed with some of these guys. And I think that is more important to me, is developing a winning mindset and getting these guys into the off season, having them think of how good they could be, right? Instead of having this team head into the off season, hoping we bring in better players than the ones we have now. These guys have to develop. They have to get the right mindset. They have to get the right attitude going. They've got to put in the work. And that's to me, that's the most important thing. Winning begets winning, and losing begets losing. We could be the Browns and go draft, one of the most talented rosters in the NFL and still not do anything with it. That's what they do. And we don't want to be that. Like, I'd rather have a less talented roster that finds ways to win games stupidly than a team that has all the talent in the world and can't get out of their own way.
And hey, if the Steelers are able to pull off this somehow division title, which would be awesome, it'd be probably one I remember. Amazing. Like, remember that crappy Steelers team that won the division? But like that one would stick out to me for a while. But I feel like if that's what they're able to pull off, then like it's probably easier to try to find that replacement for Ben Roethlisberger. Like, hey, look, we went to the playoffs. Like we have a playoff roster here. We have a ton of cap space. We have some decent draft picks. Like, come on over. Like I totally agree with you that helps the team more getting back into this game, because obviously this is one step at a time here. But is there any kind of bold predictions? Like, I know we've been calling for like a defensive touchdown or something. Like the Steelers just haven't. They've made big plays and they've been close to scoring. I know we've been calling for like a defensive score, or like a trick play or something different that we haven't seen from this team all season yet. Do you feel like there could be something goofy up the Steelers' sleeves this weekend, or do you have that gut feeling at all? I know when we've had that gut feeling, it hasn't happened, but do you have any bold predictions, I should say?
Absolutely, TJ Watt strip sack touchdown. It's going to happen this week, unlike the last couple of times I've predicted, a strip sack for a touchdown. It's going to happen this week, though. I'm pretty confident.
A strip sack touchdown, Patrick Mahomes. People would start like really talking about him for MVP if that happened. Strip sack, touch. If he finished the whole play, strip sack, fumble recovery, touchdown.
Oh, I want to see another one of those where he tackles the guy and just takes the ball straight out of his arms and just like TJ Watt hits the guy, and by the time they're like on the ground, TJ Watt just has the ball. One of those would be great.
Ryan Fitzpatrick, I believe, on the Dolphins, and then who's the Jets quarterback? Because I know he did it at least twice.
Yeah.
Oh well. Yeah, some crappy quarterback. I'm pretty sure the Jets won that game though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just default Jets last name quarterback. But anyway, so obviously this is going to be a pretty big task for the Steelers. If they manage to have the 7 consecutive win Chiefs at full power, to me, I get nervous. I'm gonna be very hesitant turning that TV on in the afternoon there on Sunday. But without those guys, man, I am liking the Steelers' chances to win this game. Like really, everyone could come back minus Kelsey and Hill. I'm like, the Steelers are going to win this thing in a slugfest. So just Chris Boswell is going to kick a couple field goals, and the Chiefs don't have their kicker. So I feel like the Steelers would win a kicking contest. Like I feel like that's how this game plays out. Do you think Chris Boswell, obviously a Pro Bowl snub, they usually take 4 kickers? The Pro Bowl's weird this year, like what they've announced, like a very minimal at every position, just 1 free safety. So Minkah Fitzpatrick didn't make it. Kevin Byard from the Titans did, who's having a great year. Totally fair. But like, is this one that you could see come down to another kicking battle? That's kind of what the Steelers, how they beat the Titans last week. Is this win coming off of Chris Boswell's toe?
It's going to have to. I mean, the Steelers can't score. It's not, their only red zone weapon is Pat Freiermuth. That's pretty much it.
Concussion protocol.
Yeah. Did he even have a chance to come back this week?
He could.
I believe protocol is crazy.
He would have to be limited tomorrow, Thursday, depending when you're listening to this. I believe it's like limited, and then a full practice. So like if he has a full practice on Saturday, then he'd be able to go. But I'm pretty sure it's completely reliant on him doing something tomorrow. I think that's what he has to do to be able to get back in. But like you look at this team, Chase Claypool has 1 touchdown this year. He had 9 receiving and then a couple rushing as a rookie. He has 1 total this year. Naji Harris, I know he can put up some points, but hey, you know what though? Before we end this off, I want to talk about that tight end position. I hate to call it addition by subtraction, but Eric Ebron goes out. I feel like this tight end group takes a bump up because they're still asking these guys to block regardless who's in. Gentry looks like a good tight end. He looks like a good number 2. I feel like that's someone else. Like both Freiermuth and Gentry need to get the ball more. Gentry made 3 guys look like fools when he caught that 1 pass, and then they never looked his way again. What do you think? Do the Steelers underutilize tight ends?
Ben Roethlisberger has always underutilized his tight ends. That is changed a bit with Pat Freiermuth. Pat Freiermuth is getting more targets than Heath Miller did, like a higher percentage of targets than Heath Miller did. I think other than there was like 1 season where we lost a bunch of receivers and Heath Miller suddenly became like one of his top targets. But that's the territory Pat Freiermuth is in right now. As for Gentry looks good. But he is the guy who is benefiting from Canada's offense. We've talked about this before. I talked about in the offseason how Canada loves guys who are just not offensive threats that he can just scheme things to. And that little screen pass they do with Gentry where he blocks and it's like, oh, no, the pass rusher beat me. And then I just turn around and catch the ball. Like he's literally blocking, pushes the guy out, and then just turns. And the pass rusher goes past it, and it's him, and there's nobody because no one's covering him. Literally no one is covering Zach Gentry, and they're like, okay, if no one's going to cover him, we're going to run this little screen pass to him while you're looking at the run and you're looking at the play action, all that stuff. So I do like Gentry. He's a fantastic blocker. He probably will get used more in the offense in the future, but right now it's mostly Matt Canada shenanigans that he is the beneficiary of. But yeah, I would love, man, if Pat Freiermuth is back, they got to throw the ball to him. That game where we lost a game and they threw twice to him, it was just stupid. It was I was 3 targets, and 2 were big plays. One he got hurt and then the touchdown. We got to see more. We have to see more from Pat Freiermuth.
Yeah, I feel like he could be putting up stat lines similar to the best tight ends in football. Like
Yeah.
Kelsey, like obviously, like Kelsey's one of the best tight ends, one of the best athletes in the history of the game. Whether or not people want to admit that, like Freiermuth is a bit of a slimmer body type, more kind of reminiscent of a receiver, but there's still nothing stopping him from just being a freak of nature, big-bodied receiver that plays tight end. Like he should be a guy that puts up stupid stats. And I think he probably develops into that as years go on, and maybe a new quarterback, whenever that time really does come, whether or not it's this offseason or not, someone that looks to their tight end more. I think Pat Freiermuth explodes. But we are at the hour mark of our show, Geoffrey, and you know how we end off every show. We need a score prediction. I know you kind of started it a little bit, and you've gotten into the wacky predictions this year, so why don't we let that boat start rolling? I know earlier on we let our guest do one with the Chiefs having their players versus the ones on COVID not being able to play. So why don't you give me 2 score predictions?
All right. So if they have their guys, if they have Kelsey and Hill, I'm going to go Steelers winning the game 27-24, with at least a defensive touchdown and another turnover that sets the Steelers up. And this time, instead of just gaining like 3 yards and kicking a field goal, they actually score a freaking touchdown off good field position. And if they don't, it's going to be a play down to your opponent type of game. People are going to absolutely be angry, and it's going to be like I'm going to have them scoring more 28 to like 17, just nightmare of a game where the Chiefs just run all over the Steelers and everything goes wrong. That's my prediction because that's what makes the most sense in a season that doesn't make any sense.
Okay, so I'm going to do things a little bit differently, but still some possibly wacky things nonetheless. Oh, geez. Now, in this one, I feel like if the Chiefs players aren't in, if they're not playing in this game, I think either team is going to struggle to score, and it's going to be like, oh, God, what are we watching? I think it's going to be a tight game. And I could even see the Steelers not score a single touchdown, but still win this game. I think we could see the Steelers win this one 12-10. A 2-point game without these players. Just neither team can get going. The Chiefs offense finds a way into the end zone. But the Steelers just do the same thing, force a couple turnovers, knock some field goals through. If the Chiefs stars are playing, I think the Steelers will score more because how often we've seen teams run up the score on the Steelers, and then they go prevent, and the Steelers are able to dink and dunk their way down the field and score, and they just give up yardage and just force the Steelers to chew up the clock and give them points. But I think the Steelers still lose, and the Chiefs jump out to a big lead. And I think someone heck, it could be both Hill and Kelsey that go off, but I think someone will. And I think it could be a little ugly to a degree. I feel like it would be like 34-17, maybe 34-20, and the Steelers scoring a couple late to make it look better. But I feel like it could be an ugly game if they're all playing. So I think it's really going to be interesting to see how things shake up with the COVID list. We really won't know until the morning of that game how things are exactly going to shake up. But with all that being said, Geoffrey, is there anything you want to plug for the people?
Well, right now I've got the Vertex about Joe Hayden and how he was used and what he did in that game. And I've got another article coming out later this week. I don't really know what I'm doing with it yet, but I haven't fully decided. But keep track of that and just follow the podcast. Follow the Behind the Steel Curtain podcast, all of this audio stuff. It's a great platform, lots of good shows.
Hey, it's the top platform in all of SB Nation. If you like cage side seats for their fighting stuff, we're above them. If you like the other NFL teams podcast, we're above them too. It doesn't matter what sport. BTSC, the #1 podcast in all of SB Nation, and we couldn't do that without each and every one of you. So thank you for tuning in, subscribing, hitting that 5-star button. And if you're new, do all those things, and we can continue to create this amazing content that we know each and every one of you love, and continue to break down your favorite team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the final note, make sure you click over to BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Obviously, there's going to be tons of breaking news coming out in the following days. The Steelers' health stuff, of course, Pat Freiermuth on that injured list with his concussion. We should know his status. Dotson could be coming back. We know he was put on that return list. Could he return this week? Could it be in the next couple? we'll have to wait and see. It could be this week, so that's something you're going to want to keep your eyes dialed in for. But most importantly, this COVID stuff. This game could change at times and dates. It could remain the same, and all the players just be out. The Steelers have gotten a couple guys testing positive. The Chiefs didn't have anyone today, so it's going to be interesting how things work out up until whenever this game gets kicked off. Right now, Sunday, 4:25 p.m. Eastern Time. So with all that being said, you've listened to Know Your Enemy. For my co-host, Geoffrey Benedict, my name is Michael Beck. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys soon.